Where do you go when you are having a hard time? Where do you go when you are at your highest? Where do you go when you are at your lowest? Where do you go where you don't feel like yourself? Who can you call to ask that strange question? Welcome back to Daring Discussions, the podcast where we keep it real, raw, and righteous. This is the podcast where we bridge the gap between the science and scripture of human sexuality, and it is me, your girl, the #1 Christian sexologist, and your favorite girlfriend. How y'all doing? Did you enjoy the last episode? Did you watch the last episode? Have you liked, shared, and subscribed? I mean, these are the instructions. Have you done it? Are you being disobedient? That's all right. I'm sure you will after this one. Matter of fact, you can watch it and press the bell right now. You can subscribe. If you're listening to the audio, you can follow, download, all the things, right? Anyway, so as we know, last episode, we kicked off our series, What Makes Me a Sexual Being, where we are going in, taking a deep dive into Dennis Daly's Circle of Sexuality model and looking at what scripture has to say about it and what scriptural or biblical characters have lived out these experiences. Last week, we kicked off with Sensuality, where we looked at the wonderful work of God and how we are fearfully and wonderfully made, fearfully meaning in awe or reverentially, and wonderfully meaning in a way that we can't fully comprehend the intricacies of the body, understanding that science was created to explain creation, and sensuality is the way in which we connect with ourselves, our bodies, and the rest of the world, particularly those that we are romantically involved with or desire to be involved with. We left off understanding that connection or hinting at that connection with intimacy, which is what we're going to talk about today. That is circle number 2, intimacy. And the intimacy circle, as I said last time, each circle has a that's the overarching circle, an overarching category, and then there are a number of subcategories under it. In the same way, intimacy will fall under intimacy. First and foremost, we understand is vulnerability, and then there's caring, loving, liking, risk-taking, self-disclosure, trust, and reciprocity. Here at the Intimacy Firm, you already know, we used sexologist Shamira's definition of intimacy, being seen, heard, valued, and understood. This episode, we're also going to look at Webster's definition and God's. But before we do that, let's kick it off with our favorite segment of the day, As For Me and My House. Shout out to our sister over on Instagram who put a little jingle, I asked 2 weeks ago for a little ditty because I said I wanted a jingle for As For Me and My House. And baby girl slid in my DM that she had to use her good voice to do a little As For Me. I can't do it. But if I could figure out how to play it from here so y'all can hear it, I'm going to add it in. But thank you, sis. I appreciate you. And with your permission, once I can figure out how to get it out of the DMs onto this going to be the jingle. But if you have any other ideas, by all means, send them my way. If you can email me, admin@theintimacyfirm.com. That way I can actually have the MP3 file. It would be great. Anyway, question, our Answer For Me in My House of the day comes from one of our brothers. Hey, sis. Hey, bro. They just don't never want to say girlfriend. Anyway, I'm looking for some advice. My wife and I have been married for a while, almost a decade. But lately it feels like we are just going through the motion. That is more like my roommate or my teammate than my wife. We mostly talk about things like chores, bills, kids, and other family stuff. But I miss my girl, the one that I could not stop talking to, the one that makes you hide in the stove once you've been talking all night long, the one that I decided to marry. I miss her. How can I fix it? How can I get that experience back without it feeling awkward or forced? Well, bro, first and foremost, y'all been married a decade. She's not the girl that you marry anymore. And that's not what you asked about, wrote about, but I just wanted to just establish that because we all need permission and space and grace to grow and be people other than who we are. That does not account for the fact that y'all feel like roommates, But I want to encourage you to desire the freedom and the excitement of that time and figure out how to create that space in the world that y'all live in now. But wanting your girl back can't mean you want the one that you propose to, because y'all kids, a couple kids, and 10 years later, we aren't the same person. You aren't the same person. So I want to start with that. But also, well, we've been married for a long time. I was married for just shy of a decade. We can kind of get into muscle memory, that kind of monotonous day-to-day things where we can kind of just reach our hands out for things before it's even offered, say yes to questions before it's even answered. We know our partners and our spouses so well that we just flow on autopilot. And autopilot can sometimes be the thing that zaps us from sensual, intimate, and passionate experiences. So I would encourage you to take the time, and similar to what I said to our sister last week, take the time considering what was working for you all at that time. What was the thing that allowed you to stay on the phone all night long? What were some of the things that y'all were talking about? What were the environments? Where did you all talk best at? Were you at home? Was it better on dates? Do you need to consider maybe getting a babysitter so that you can have that alone time? Like, are there like stressors that can be addressed, like other responsibilities that can be delegated, those kind of things? So as much as you want to add something to this space, you also may have to also assess the scene and figure out what's kind of zapping away from that passion. And if y'all are in the rut where you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, then you take the responsibility to kind of shake it up, right? You set the tone for where you want these things to go. How do you want these things to shift? And have a conversation with your wife about, and see if she even has noticed what you're noticing. A lot of times we do see what's going on, but don't really see the opening to begin to discuss it. So of course you have to talk about chores and bills and kids and family responsibilities. That has to be a conversation, but that doesn't have to be the only conversation. You want to make sure that you are addressing any competing priorities and set a time. And I am very big on scheduling time, whether that is scheduling sex, whether that is scheduling conversations, whether that is scheduling date nights, because when you are a busy family and you've been married for almost or a decade now, the calendar is the thing, right? If it doesn't make the calendar, it doesn't happen. So that time where you all are just focused on one another needs to get on the calendar so that every other priority understands that it cannot impact what this time is. Just like if your Google Calendar, people can't put an appointment on your schedule unless it's an emergency. If that time is blocked off, then make the rest of your life the same way, so that as you slowly but surely you will get into the motion of understanding that, let's say, for example, Thursday from 8 to 12 is our time. The kids go down at that time, or they're bigger kids, the door is locked at that time. Whatever you need, unless somebody is bleeding or dying or Jesus came back, I don't want to hear about it. And you want to maintain that boundary, and so that everybody else and every other thing will know 8 to 12, this is our time. And then you can then begin to build that excitement around the 8 to 12 time. You begin to plan. And now your conversations are planning what are we doing next Thursday? What Thursday are we going to take to go away? Like, those kind of things, like infiltrate your life with some type of excitement and expectation. A lot of times monotony is void of expectation, void of something to look forward to. Right. And, some people are listening like, but this your wife, this your husband, you should be looking forward to coming. You should. Absolutely. But when you get confident that somebody not going nowhere, it's natural that you begin to be like, they're not going nowhere. So it's not top of mind. But because it's bothering you, now you can take the lead with shifting the dynamic. And then hopefully and likely your wife would then also follow suit. So that's what I would do. As for me and my house, I would plan some things, figure out some things that I can do to shake it up after first having a conversation with my partner about, hey, this is what I'm peeping. Are you seeing it how I'm seeing it? And then, addressing the competing priorities, infusing some type of thing that'll shake it up, and then begin to schedule it so that other competing priorities don't hinder what y'all have planned. So, and that's what I would do as for me and my. All right, let's move on. Again, we are talking about intimacy today. Intimacy is the second circle in the circles of sexuality, the second episode in the series of What Makes Me a Sexual Being. My favorite scripture that really highlights or illustrates this particular circle is Genesis 2, verse 24 through 25. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. This is our leave and cleave scripture. Thing is, you also understand it, or some not illustration translations that for this cause shall a man leave his mother and father and be joined to his wife, so the two are no more one, but they shall become one flesh. This ESV said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. Do you understand? Intimacy, as I also see it, is being completely naked, even when you're fully clothed. Now, in this particular instance, Adam and Eve happened to be actually naked, but they had no reason at that point for clothes. For us in where we live today, you got to put some clothes on unless you live in the nudist colony. So, which most of us do not. So, being completely naked means completely free, completely vulnerable. And so when a man left his father and mother and the safety and understanding and his role in that family, and it was joined to his wife and became one flesh, they became a unit joined together so that they can learn each other, grow with each other, bond with one another to walk in that freedom of nakedness. So we know that one flesh is layered, right? We know that there is a spiritual aspect of becoming one together in the spirit. There is a physical aspect of, once you come together as husband and wife, you actually come together as one flesh, right? There's a sexual impact of it. And then there's the becoming one in understanding of one another, which is the bonding. And that's the intimacy piece where we are being vulnerable and open and learning to trust one another. So when we think about they felt no shame, that is the place where the partners have grown to fully expose themselves, who they are inside and out, without fear of rejection, without fear of shame, without fear of backlash, without fear of ridicule, all of the things, unfortunately, that we now have to deal with because we live in a fallen world. In Genesis 2:25, they were naked and felt no shame because there was no sin. And we know then in chapter 3, all of the things changed. There was no sense of rejection. There was no body image issues. There was no concern for, does this look right? My fupa, my man boobs, my, ingrown hairs, does my breasts hang low? Do they wobble to and fro? Like, we didn't have to deal with all of that in 225, right? But now that we do. So when we are seeking that naked and unashamed experience, it's us being able to, we have to work through a little bit more than they did in scripture. But we see with Adam and Eve, they are the first human examples that we have of intimacy. We have the first human understanding of joint, like mutuality in vulnerability, the first human example of unity and support, with Eve being created to be, a helpmeet and a suitable helper, which is honoring her purpose in life and Adam's leadership, as well as Eve's capacity and capabilities. There was no you over me or us. There wasn't that fighting, that happened, her in Genesis 3, where it says your desire will be for your husband, he will only. We didn't have that yet. They were working in harmony with one another. And we know that became built off of in early parts of Genesis 2, where Adam and God really established what intimacy is. We are talking a little bit about the different types of intimacy, but we see, emotional intimacy where Adam and God spent time together. They got to know one another. We had the, financial intimacy where Adam was fully dependent on God for his sustenance. We have, even intellectual intimacy where God created all of the world and all of the garden and all of earth and the livestock and all of the animals and all of that, and then gave Adam dominion, entrusted the oversight of his creation to Adam. So the product of his intellectual sovereignty and knowledge, he trusted Adam to oversee. So we see all of that, really how we come to know these different types of intimacy. We see it with Adam and God first, and then we see the emotional, romantic, marital intimacy and human intimacy with Eve and Adam as neighbor, but then also Eve and Adam as husband and wife. So I want you, as you think about it, that we're going through this, consider where you have these types of intimacy in your life, whether you are single or married or not, and understand that there are opportunities for you to experience all manner of intimacy in your different types of relationships. Yes, obviously romantic, but also familially, platonically with your friends, spiritually with your church family or your leaders, most importantly, spiritually with God, and even some of it within yourself and amongst between you and your children. So just consider as we go through the list where you have these in your life, where you could sharpen these a little bit more in your life, or where these are missing, and then you know how to pray. Ask God to open up your eyes for opportunities to have the fullness of those intimate experiences. So first off, one that is most common to people is emotional intimacy, right? That is that deep emotional connection. That is the sharing of feelings, fears, dreams, secrets. That is, when, that whole idea of, check on your strong friend, right? But then the strong friend is the one that also to say, you all right? Yeah, I'm good. The strong friend don't really share what they truly going through. Emotional intimacy is when the strong friend says, you know what, life is life. Okay, I'm actually struggling. I actually just had one of those conversations with a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and because I'm spiraling, like tripping. And I was in church, and she was like, "You good?" I was like, She's like, "No, you're not. I'm gonna call you tomorrow." And I had to have a hard conversation, and it was scary. And I shared things that wasn't a thing, even with her being a really good friend that I never shared before. And I'm sitting like, what is the outcome going to be for that? But, I was able to get it off my chest. I was able to get it out, and then to trust the Lord that was a safe space. And I believe that it was a safe space for it to come out. But that's what emotional intimacy is. And again, not just reserved for romantic spaces, but where do you go when you are having a hard time? Where do you go when you are at your highest? Where do you go when you are at your lowest? Where do you go where you don't feel like yourself? Who can you call to ask that strange question? For many of us, it's our therapist, right? Because that was one of the conversations I had with my friend. It was like, yes, I love y'all, like our friend group, and I want to share these things, but I don't want to feel like a burden. And I feel like some of the things that I wrestle with are reserved for my therapist. And so there's an emotional intimacy between my therapist and I. Well, yes, she is bound by law to maintain my secrets, but there's a difference between keeping a secret and being able to handle the secret, being able to hold the secret, being able to see me as who I am with my secrets. Or not, and the secret doesn't necessarily have to even be a negative thing, but just a thing that I have not readily or be willing, or you have not found yourself ready, willing, and able to share, with the world, right? Then there is spiritual intimacy, which is connecting through shared beliefs, prayer, worship, and encouraging each other in the faith. So that means when somebody says, "How can I pray for you?" go giving them a little bit more than life, health, and strength. That means praying for your partner. Many of us get married and don't. We prayed for a husband. We prayed for a wife that God may send us one. And then we get married and stop praying for them. When was the last time you've asked your partner, your spouse, or if you're in a serious relationship, how can I pray for you? What can I seek the Lord for? What can I stand in the gap with you about? Right? We just assume that we can assess from afar, or sometimes we assume that people can see all that we are going through. And if they really cared, that they would ask, but that may not necessarily be the case. People got their own stuff going on. Even the people living in your own house got stuff going on. So I want to encourage you to ask someone who is very close to you, who you may pray for every day, ask them what they need prayer for and see how that may make a shift in your intimate connection. Spiritual intimacy is also between you and the Lord. And really, I tend to believe that how you relate to God is the foundation for which you're able to relate to anybody and connect intimately with anybody else. If you are closed off and guarded and jaded and dishonest with the lover of your soul, the one who knows everything, who knows you in, out, backwards and forwards, up, down, yeah, you will struggle to be that free with anybody else. Because imagine hiding something from somebody who knows everything. And we struggle. So if we can't be even honest and real with God, we're really going to struggle to have that same honesty and freedom with regular people, with everyday folks. Then there's physical intimacy. And I want to note, physical and sexual intimacy are two different things. Physical intimacy is about closeness. Physical intimacy is about, like, I think it was last episode when I talked about, like, that skin-to-skin contact. Like, if I let you touch my bare skin, not sexually, but just, and I don't lose my mind and melt into my seat, I trust you. I feel close to you. I'm bonded, with you. Like, this idea of, like, personal space, right? Us, like, I don't like being touched. I don't like hugs. Me personally, I don't like hugs. But that's learned behavior, because we know we were born with an innate need and innate desire to be touched. But life and other circumstances and trauma and, the world and COVID has put us in a place where, back up a little bit. But physical intimacy is the safety of people in your space. In that non-romantic ways. That's the hug from the church mother, which during COVID, missing that hug from that, that one mother at the church who hugged you so good. Like, there's a hug ministry that's out there that people just love on you and they can feel everything that you're going through your hugs. And I feel like, I think I don't like hugs because I'm like, yo, you hug me, I'm going to break down. Don't hug me and don't rub my back, child, because I'm holding on with bubble gum and paper clips. Please. But I know that that's learned behavior. I know that is a way of a defense mechanism where I keep people out. So that's the physical intimacy, and then we understand that sexual intimacy is the shared sexual expression. It is the freedom and the vulnerability to have sex, to try new things, to having sex for the first time, to express your likes and dislikes, your turn-ons and your turn-offs, to sit and be willing to listen to changes that your partner need. That's that mutual exchange of sexual intimacy. And a lot of times as Christians, we use the word intimacy as a euphemism for sex, but it's not the case, because sex can be intimate, but sex can also not be intimate. And so it is important for us to be able to delineate between the two. There's also financial intimacy. Do we know how much money each other makes? Do we know each other's credit score? Do we know what each other does for a living? Do we have plans, or have we shared our plans for retirement? Do we have a shared bank account? Are we authorized users on each other's account? If your partner or spouse were to die today, heaven forbid, would you be able to know who to call? Do you know the passwords? Can you get into the bank account to make life continue on? Should that happen? Have you all had that discussion about spending habits? Who gets to set the tone for where the money gets spent in your house? That's the financial intimacy. And then there's social or recreational intimacy. Do y'all have shared experiences together? Are you a stamp collector and your partner holds space for you to do that? Are y'all going to Comic-Con together? Are you allowed to go to Comic-Con while he goes to, the sneaker convention, because you all have the intimacy where y'all have shared recreation, but also you all have the freedom to have social experiences or recreational experiences that don't involve your other partner, without fear that means something about your relationship. We share social networks. We also share friends, as much as we also had the freedom to have those connections that our partner isn't a part of. Not excluded from, but not a part of. Like, I don't feel Do you feel the need that every time your husband or wife put their shoes on that you got to go out the door behind them, right? And or every time are you particularly saying, no, you can't stay here? But we're not talking about keeping your partner out of things, not an exclusionary thing, but it's a thing where you came in here with interests that I don't necessarily share, and that doesn't impact our relationship, but we have also found things that we connect with and share together. Our friends know one another, but we also have very particular friends that we don't mix, which is okay because mixing friends can be tricky. We see these examples all throughout Scripture. You have God and Adam in Genesis 2. You have Adam and Eve right after that. Then you have, popular ones like David and Jonathan, Ruth and Naomi. Just even the prophets like Nathan with David when he had to hold him accountable for what he did with Bathsheba. There's an intimacy when your leader has to pull you up on some stuff, right? Or like when people who have spiritual authority have to come and, tell you about yourself. Even that is intimacy. And I think that we would have a better opportunity to experience intimacy in its fullness if we understood it, again, beyond what Hollywood has presented it as. So we talked about intimacy, like what it is, the definition. We talked about different types. We looked at it through the Bible. Now let's look at some practical ways that we can cultivate it in our own everyday life. First and foremost is openness and communication. You need to first discover when it comes time to answer questions, right? If somebody says to you, how are you doing? What's wrong? Everything okay? How have you been? Like, those type of questions. And you think one thing, feel one thing, and then say something else. We know that there may be an issue in intimacy there. And some instances it's not a problem. It's just like the person that you're talking to isn't the person that you want to divulge the information to, which is fine because everything is a fact. But if there is a place or a person that you have that known connection with, or at least the nature of the relationship is such that this is a normal question or a normal place where you should rather be able to share and you don't, then we need to look at what's going on. Is there something within a relationship or something within yourself? But cultivating intimacy in any form is dependent on openness and communication. Talking about how to create what safety looks like for you. You have to first know the answer to that for yourself, and you have to convey that information to the people in your life. And if for whatever reason you come against a roadblock and there's a need that you have for safety that they aren't willing or unable to provide, then you adjust accordingly. Now, there are some things that's a you and God thing, and it's not anybody else's responsibility to create that safety for you. There's fear and angst and worry and anxiety and depression and those kind of things. They can help, like your regular everyday friends, your partners, your family. But some of those things you have to get from the Lord. And we mess up sometimes when we expect God-like things from our mere mortal companion. Next, you want to be an active listener because intimacy is a two-way street. You can't have a healthy relationship in any form where safety only counts for you, where you can go and you can share and you can talk and you can, lay it all out in whatever form of intimacy it is. But when they try to get that same from you, you're not available. So active listening looks like how you can be a good partner as well, a good friend, a good family member, a good daughter, a good sister, a good mother, a good father, a good husband, a good leader, whatever. It requires active listening. You also want to make sure that you are setting and maintaining healthy boundaries. Intimacy and vulnerability requires a responsibility. There is responsible vulnerability that comes with appropriate boundaries and boundaries that are set and enforced by you, because people take their cues on how to respect your boundaries from you. If you don't, they won't. And you also notice that there are people in our lives who set boundaries that we sometimes for our own gain will push the limit a little bit, right? And intimacy looks like acknowledging where we've done that, making amends, or holding folks accountable if they've done it in our lives, and then again, adjusting accordingly. We want to make sure that you are not leaning into isolation, especially this corridor of the year. I know for me, from November through to March, really spring, not only is this the time where, seasonal affective disorder or SAD comes, it gets dark earlier, it's colder. Well, I don't know what's going on with the weather now, but it should be cold. And then you also have November 28th, which is the anniversary of my mom's passing, which just so happens to be on Thanksgiving this year. We have her birthday, December 21st, and then we have Christmas. And then Valentine's Day while I'm single, and then my birthday without, it's just a bunch of stuff, a bunch of big, moments that my mom's not here for that kind of comes with a bit of grief for me this season, and where I would normally want to retreat. Intimacy looks like being open and honest with the people who love me about what I need, but also seeking the Lord regularly and depending on Him so that there gets to a place where this isn't my recurring experience every single season, where that's not my testimony anymore, that this corridor of the year. But it looks like being honest with God about what this season really feels like and what it looks like and what I am, the weight that I'm carrying, because of it. But also this looks like, if you're married, date nights. It looks like, establish things with the kids where they can depend on every Tuesday, Taco Tuesday, where we eat in front of the TV and watch our show. It looks like a, yearly trip with your friends, like whatever, like those things that you can depend on. Vulnerability and safety and emotions and feelings looks like having something you can depend on. And then also it looks like forgiveness and grace, right? Understanding that as you are building these intimate experiences that you are building with humans that's going to mess up, humans that's going to miss the mark. And sometimes the ones that we love the most are the ones that we hurt the most, or and vice versa, the one who we love the most hurt us the most. And so we have to figure out what forgiveness and grace looks like. Number one, because forgiveness is a mandate as a believer in order for God to forgive us. If His grace is sufficient for us, then we should also extend that to others. But also that is how we grow in connection. Your ability to experience something and then grow from it and then draw closer to one another really adds to the strength of your friendship, just like it does with the strength of our walk. Every time we go through a hardship and, God brings us through and we depend on Him, we get to meet a new side of Him. We draw closer to Him even more. So that's just the same thing in our regular everyday relationship. So that is intimacy. A reflection I want to leave with you all today is when you think about your relationships, romantic, platonic, familial, and spiritual, in which of these relationships do you feel called to deepen intimacy a little bit more? And then what steps can you take in this week based on what we've talked about to create more of that opportunity for trust, openness, and respect? If there are hard conversations that you need to have with a friend, is there a new activity that you need to propose to your children or your spouse? Is there a spiritual leader who's been, reaching out to pray with you that you've kind of been, fleeing a little bit because you don't really want to tell them what's going on? Like any of that, like think about it, and ask it. If you have a blind spot to it, that's cool, but just ask the Lord, what areas of my life or people or relationships in my life do I need to, or can I deepen my intimacy with, and in a way that ultimately, brings you glory. So just let's consider that. So that's it for today. We are going to transition into next week. We are going to look at the next circle is sexual identity, and it's connecting. All of these things are connected because you think about intimacy and showing up, like what we said earlier, completely naked, even when you're fully clothed, is showing up as your true self. And part of our sexual identity is part of who we truly are and how and what parts of ourselves do we show the world. So make sure you come right back here next Tuesday. If you have any, as always, questions, comments, concerns, confusions, or kudos, drop them in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, follow, download, whichever platform you are looking or listening to this at. I appreciate you. And I am your favorite girl friend. And I can't wait to see you next week. Bye.